Anyway, Piano Man Chuck here, and I just did a little classical piece, a little bit from Mozart. And basically, while I'm playing, it has a certain action to it. So when you hear the word action as a pianist and somebody asks you, hey, man, how's the action on this? What they really refer to by action is how does it feel? And more specifically, how does it feel means basically if I'm going to press a note, is it going to take forever to come back up? How fast does it come back up? Is it good for doing repeated trills? So there's all kinds of things involved with action, not just how it feels texture-wise. This is kind of plasticky, smooth feeling. There's others that have like an ivory or ebony finish to it. And then there's the older real ivory keyboards. But basically, how much resistance is there? Do I have to press hard to play a note? Or do I have to press so lightly that anything is going to sound? And that can be a problem for somebody that's used to a heavier action. If you're going to go and play a keyboard that has a lighter action, you might be coming down to play a C chord, and the next thing you know, your pinky over here is just kind of touching the B next to the C, and it's going to sound. So you don't want that. That's a real light action, and you might be, used to something that light. But if you're used to a heavier action, this is a concern you have coming back to something that's a little bit lighter. And if you're doing a lighter action piano that you're used to, then a heavier action might cause you a little bit more fatigue in the fingers since you're not used to pressing harder. Now, as a pianist, and let's turn the clock back before we had digital pianos, all you had were the real thing, real pianos. So if you played on one piano, it follows that you should be able to play on any other piano, just like driving a car. You're driving your car. Now you get into a friend's car or somebody else's car, and yeah, you can drive it, but it feels different. The steering is different. The brakes are different. The pickup is different. Everything's different. But it's all the same at the same time. Same thing with the piano. Everything's different, yet all the same. And again, it all boils down to action. What does it feel like? Now, with the advent of digital pianos, you have some actions like a piano which are light and some that are heavy. And you even have digital pianos that are configurable. You can program it by means of some setting, usually within the keyboard interface, that makes it feel a little bit harder or lighter, whatever. So let's talk about action. That's real important. Now, a professional pianist, myself included, I can take any piano that I go to and sit down at it, and I can get used to it in a matter of seconds. So it doesn't really matter that much for me. But for most people, if you're used to something light or you're used to something heavy and going to something that's the complete opposite of what you're used to, it might be a little bit of a challenge for you, at least till you get used to that. So let's talk about like some of the keyboards that I have. I have a Chord Kronos 88, and that's a heavier action, so I have to press down a little bit harder. This is a Nord Stage 2. The action is a little bit lighter than that, but I'm finding it's more like most of the pianos that I sit down and play at when I play out at a gig that already has a piano there. Then there's things like the Casio Privia series, which has a great action. It's a little bit heavier, though. So for some people, heavier action doesn't cut it. They don't have the strength in their fingers. Maybe they have arthritis or something else that's going to restrict them from something like that. And then there's the lighter ones where you have people with lead fingers and it just, oh my God, it's a disaster. But let's go back and talk about a regular acoustic piano. We're talking about grands, baby grands, and even the uprights. Basically, with a regular piano, and if you've taken apart a piano or have ever seen the inside, there's a series of strings, and when you press a key, it hits something that hits a hammer that comes up and hits that key. Okay, and these keyboards that say hammer action, they try to mimic that hammer hitting, so it feels like a hammer. But getting back to that keyboard, the real piano, when you look at it and you see all the strings exposed, you'll see on the upper end 3 strings per key, and they're real thin. And as you get to the middle, you'll see 2 strings per key, and they get a little thicker. And when you get down to the bass end, you'll see 1 string per key, and they're really thick. So it follows that on a real acoustic piano, the lower register, the ones with the thick keys, this requires a little more, it's more resistance to hit this with your fingers. So you have to play it a little bit louder, or heavier, faster. You get to the middle, it's more light, and when you get to the top, because there are 3 really, really thin, you don't need much force over here to make it sound. So the weights that are required for your fingers to hit a key and get a note are, more weight is required at the bottom end, more average weight at the middle, and less at the top. So that's the model that the digital piano manufacturers are trying to follow. So when people ask me, which is all the time, about action, which one do I prefer? It doesn't matter what I prefer. And I can't stress that enough, that action is a very personal thing. Action is whatever feels good to you, whatever you're going to perform the best on. If that's a lighter action, great. If it's a heavier action, great. But it's only you that can decide. You know the strength or lack of strength in your fingers. Do you have the capability of hitting these notes harder all the time for a 2-hour performance? And if you do, and that's what you're used to, you want a heavier action. And if you're not, or even if you're just beginning, a lighter action might be fine for you. So it all boils down to what you want. Now, I've played millions, well, not millions, but I've played lots of pianos, both digital, both acoustic, and when I get to a gig that already has a piano, I have no idea what the piano action is like until I actually get there. I took a gig at this lounge over in Koreatown, and they have this Samick grand piano. And it's beautiful looking, but the action was so light. Oh, it seemed like all you had to do was breathe and it would play. And as a pianist, that's not really a problem as a seasoned pianist, but it kind of was a problem for me because they didn't want me to play loud enough where people couldn't hear their own conversations. It had to be light. But the action was so light on it, I barely had to touch it. And it played. And to complicate things further, when you have an action that's so feather light like that, like I said at the beginning, you try to play a chord and you just kind of hit the note that's right next to it, it will sound. So you have to be much more accurate with a light action in your playing to be able to play something correctly without sounding notes that you didn't intend to sound. And with a heavier action, yes, you need more strength, but you can be the action is more forgiving. If you're playing a C chord and you kind of accidentally touch that B, but so slightly that it doesn't sound. And that's cool. So that's what I wanted to get across as far as actions go. because it's very important that you, if you're especially looking for a new piano or a new digital piano or keyboard of any sort, it's so important that you, not me, not what your buddy thinks or what your teacher thinks. Your teacher has some input. It's very important that you try that piano or keyboard out to see how that suits you. I cannot tell you how many people email me or private message me or leave comments. Oh, I'm going to go and buy a digital piano and I've got it narrowed down to these 2 or 3 models. Which one do you think I should go to? Well, God, that's up to you. I can't answer that. You're the only one that knows what that action is going to be like on your fingers and your strengths and your dexterity. You're the only one that can answer that. I cannot stress that enough. So that's what I wanted to get across today about keyboard action. It's a very personal thing, and I hope this video has helped you a little bit. Piano Man Chuck, peace out. Thanks for watching.